Okay, so English was your second language, right?
Yes.
And Spanish was your first for
Yeah.
both of you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. And my question here, this is on second language acquisition. So there's two linguists here, and they both have different hypotheses. So Larry Salinger believed an interlanguage hypothesis. So it's kind of like Spanglish. Do you feel like, okay, I'm not gonna ask that question yet. And then there's another guy named Stephen Krashen. He thought of the monitor hypothesis, and this is when you're consciously correcting yourself when you speak in English. Or let's say for me, it's like in Spanish. I correct myself like, no, I can't use that conjugation of dangle. I have to put another one, you know? So it's consciously, you consciously try to correct yourself to speak the language correctly. So in your learning of English, what did you believe? Like you were more focused on when you were learning English?
I felt that I was constantly like translating. I think like trying to translate from Spanish to English. So I don't know, subconsciously, I guess that was one of the things that I was most focused
You're
on.
consciously trying to correct yourself.
Yeah, like, but I would I would be speaking English, but at the same time I would be thinking like, how would I say, like how I said it in Spanish, and if that translated correctly.
And to make sure it was coming out correct.
Yeah,
right?
most of the times I had a hard time with that because it's not the same way. Like if you're gonna say something in Spanish, it's not the same way you say it in English.
So sometimes it's not even correct when,
Yeah.
when you do. Yeah. Okay. So what about you, Alder?
Yeah, the same thing. Like usually, for you to learn a new language, you based it out from your previous language. So in my case, was the same thing. I wanted to learn English to the Spanish by translating. Really good translations, but it doesn't come out the same way, you know.
So you would consciously think in Spanish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How old were you, Jesus, when you first became exposed to English?
About 12 years old.
12? Okay. That was like when you first started learning the language?
Yes.
Okay, when do you feel like you were actually comfortable with speaking English?
When I was actually comfortable speaking it, I guess that would have been maybe like when I was 15, 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
I started feeling a little bit more comfortable. Not fully, but a little bit more.
Okay. And what about you, Alder? When were you exposed to it?
I actually
Your
started
second
around the
language.
same age, like around 12 years. I was 12 years old, but I got comfortable like when I was probably like 16 or so.
Okay, 16 years old. Okay, well, that's it. Thank you. Okay, hi Oscar. I'm gonna ask you a couple questions on your journey to your second language. I know, what was your first language?
My first language was Spanish.
And your second language?
My second language is English.
So, in your process of learning your second language, there's a couple hypotheses that some linguists like focus on. And one is, the first one that was made was kind of by Larry Salinger. This is called interlanguage. So it's kind of the mixing of your primary language to learn your second language. And it's kind of like Spanglish. Do you understand it? Yeah? Okay. And then there's a second one called the monitor hypothesis. And this is by Stephen Krashen. And this is kind of like the editing that you do in your head before you actually speak out loud. Like you're consciously trying to figure out what words go in your head, like before you speak it out loud. You understand that one?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay. So in your journey to, become an English speaker, which one do you feel you relied more on?
I felt like I relied on the first one, which was interlanguage. Because since I spoke Spanish and I was learning English,
Yeah.
I would use Spanish to help me learn English. So whenever I didn't know something in English, my Spanish language, my first language, would compensate and help me learn the new language that I was trying to learn, the words that I was trying to learn.
Okay, and then after that, thank you for your feedback. What age did you get exposed to English?
So I got exposed to English at a young age when I first started school. So it was around 5 years old.
Okay, and then when did you feel you were actually comfortable with the language?
Probably after a couple years of learning the second language, which was English. So maybe like around 8 years old.
Okay, well, thank you for your feedback.